Australia. On the 11th of the 11th, for 11 days, the people will be the power. This is your time to strike back against digital ID. For 11 days, no online shopping, no cards, no taps, cash only. Hit them where it hurts. The banks that build the tools and sell you the convenience. Boycott the supermarkets. Support your local farmers. The cash-only businesses. It is time. Will you commit to not comply? Melbourne, meet at the Shrine at 11 o'clock, then walk to the Governor's. Sydney, meet at the Anzac Monument in Hyde Park, 11 o'clock, then instructions will follow. Meet at your city or town on the 11th for Remembrance Day. They fought for our freedom. We are fighting for our freedom again. Make them proud. Let's go, Australia. Download the flyers below, print, share and unite. Together, we will take a stand. 11th of November for the 11 days. We will not comply.
Fucking government. The English don't protest about England here. The Asians don't protest about China or Japan here, do they? But the Palestinians, they come here, they're bringing their shit here, and they're protesting about their fucking country. Here, we got our problem. Fucking idiot.
Right now, the government gives us IDs, driver's license, passport, social security numbers, and others. They're separate. You lose your license, you can still pay your bills. You can still go and buy groceries. So each card controls one door, not the whole damn house. Now picture one digital ID that holds every single key you have. Your bank account, your health records, your travel, your phone, your ability to move and to operate. At first, you'll think, oh, well, this is convenient. One key for everything. No more passwords, no more fraud. But what happens when someday somebody else holds that key? They don't just control one door now, do they? No, they control your entire life. One click, boom, lights out. No money, no travel, no gas, no access. That is not an ID. That is a leash. And you are the dog. Please think on this. The entire future of the human race is depending on you to refuse digital ID. And here's how they're doing it in Italy. Massive protests are shaking Italy as citizens from both left and right unite against the government's mandatory digital ID wallet plan. Millions have refused to pay taxes and have called a general strike until the government abandons the European Union's forced digital ID rollout, which is set to be mandatory by 2026. Mainstream media, silent. But Italy has spoken loud and clear. We will not be controlled. Could this be the spark that spreads across Europe and across the world? There are two very clear choices now. We either rise up together in our millions and say no, or we follow China's example where one by one they have submitted in their millions to full control from the government. Welcome to you all. I think this is really the most important interview I've ever done, because the world is hovering on the brink of one giant boot on our collective necks, trying to silence our collective voices. So we've just come out of that saying the entire future of the human race is depending on you to refuse digital ID. Welcome Catherine Austin-Fitts, Alex Newman and Andrew Bridgen from the UK. Catherine, why is that statement so true, and why is it so important right now that every single person, especially the young parents, look in on this interview and watch the whole discussion today? Why is it so important right now?
Digital ID is a fundamental piece of putting into place train tracks that give, on a centralized basis, total financial transaction control. So our transactions stop being something that we can freely do as we choose, and and are completely under a surveillance and tracking system and can literally control us each individually in very fine-tooth ways. So you can literally say, I don't want you eating real meat, you can only eat lab-grown meat, or I don't want you being able to go to a pub and drink, or the lockdowns are here and I don't want you leaving your house and your money won't work if you leave your house. So we're talking about complete authoritarian control. We've lived in a world, Liz, where the central bankers control monetary policy but not fiscal policy. And that's what so Alex and I are in the United States, that's what the Revolutionary War was fought about, taxation with or without representation. And now you're talking about the central bankers literally being able to replace legislative representatives in the executive branch and have complete control of fiscal policy through the money and literally put everybody in a digital concentration camp.
So let's just tease that out. Monetary policy is all about the credit that's given to people, and fiscal is about the tax, is it not?
Right, so it's running the currency, and you have to understand, this is not a change in the currency. Every 80 to 120 years, the central banks put us through a reset of the currency system, and often when that reset happens, you evolve or you move the currency. And we are in a reset, but the thing about digital technology is it allows them to end currency completely and go to a state that Patrick Wood calls technocracy, so complete control by rule systems. You don't need markets, you don't need currency, you don't have any liquidity, you just go to total control. And the reality is that total control is being implemented in a world where, as we see from the pandemic, the leadership believes that they can engineer much longer lives for themselves, and they want a much smaller population, particularly with automation. So we've certainly seen that in the UK with what happened, not just with the shots, but with euthanasia, and what's happened to the elderly. We're seeing it in America too. So unfortunately, we're talking about giving unprecedented powers, the likes of which the world has never seen, to people who really do want to depopulate us.
And who really want all of it for themselves. I mean, the head of the Bank of International Settlements looks like Mr. Creosote in Monty Python, if you've ever seen him. He looks bloated, beyond bloated.
He looks more like Jabba the Hutt, actually, doesn't he?
At least we can still...
I have to say something nice about Augustine Carstens, because it was the first time in my life. So we have a great list of short videos. I love 1 minute or less videos to show to policymakers. And we have that great 59-second video of Augustine Carstens saying we can make the rules and we can enforce them centrally. And that was the first time that I'd ever seen a central banker tell the truth, in plain language. And I almost fell off my chair, and we clipped it and have sent it everywhere. But he's one of the few guys on the world stage who's telling you he wants complete control.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability, and also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
I very much recommend your short clips on Solari.com, and we'll put the links here. They are worth every parent, everybody who wants a good future for their children to look at. Alex Newman, what's your reaction when you hear what Catherine said there in the opening salvo?
Well, I agree, obviously, with everything that Catherine said. They are trying to build a digital prison, a digital gulag, the likes of which the world has never seen. Now, even if these were wonderful, well-intentioned people, that would be a really bad idea, right? right? Just giving anybody this kind of control is a recipe for disaster. But then you factor in what Catherine alluded to. Right? We know stuff about these people. We know what they believe. They believe there are too many of us on this planet, as Catherine pointed out. They believe we have too much privacy. They believe we have too much freedom. They believe that we shouldn't be eating meat if we're allowed to eat anything at all. They don't believe we should be able to educate our own children. They believe we should lose freedoms that until recent years we didn't even think of as freedoms that needed to be defended. And I encourage everybody to just remember back a few years ago, you couldn't go to your work if you were non-essential, which was most people. You could not go visit your grandma as she was dying in the hospital. You couldn't go to church, but you could go riot. So these megalomaniacs, the best thing you can say about them is that they're psychopaths. They have some sort of mental problem that makes them a threat, not just to themselves, but to all of us. I would argue that it's even worse than psychopathy. I believe there's a very real case to be made here that these people are under demonic influence, if you will. There's something that just makes them hate humanity, hate life, hate God. And so to give that kind of power, I mean, that's like giving a nuclear bomb to a mass murderer, a chainsaw murder. It's the most dangerous thing you can contemplate. And when you realize all the different things that they'll be able to control with these digital IDs and these digital currencies, and to go back to Agustin Carstens for a minute, he actually talked, I've got a video of him where he's talking about the unified digital blockchain ledger, where every asset in the universe will be tokenized, and you'll only be able to interact with that with your digital ID and your central bank digital currency. They'll be able to shut off any person in the world from being able to interact with society. This is probably the worst idea that a person could think of, and yet we're being stampeded into it as we speak. We all just saw the British Prime Minister come out and say, you're not going to be able to work if you won't take this digital ID. It's rolling out even here in the United States.
Our immigration system does need to be fair if we want to maintain that binding contract that our politics is built on. Otherwise, it undermines trust, undermines people's faith that we're on their side, and their belief that the state can and will work for them. And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that. Because decent, pragmatic, fair-minded people, they want us to tackle the issues that they see around them. And of course, the truth is, we won't solve our problems if we don't also take on the root causes.
I can't emphasize strongly enough that we must fight this with every fiber of our being, like our very lives depend on it.
Because they do. Andrew,
Right.
You've been a leader in the UK in pushing back against Starmer's tyrannical overreach. Tell us where the petition is at. Do you know the numbers that have signed that petition in the UK? And just give us an overview of the UK at the moment, a snapshot. What's happening there?
Right, it's nearly 3 million. I think actually they switched it off at about 2.85 million because it had got there in a matter of days, and they normally run for 6 months. But I think it was switched off because it was just too embarrassing for the government. I think I agree with what Alex and Catherine have said. It's been clear to me for quite some time that the social models selected by the world's elites behind the scenes is the Chinese social credit score system. They've decided that's the desirable social model for the world, and our governments around the world are in lockstep once again implementing a policy which they've never sold to the people. It wasn't in their manifestos. It's just being implemented surreptitiously. I think if we can stop digital ID, that means that basic Agenda 2030 can't happen, can't be inflicted upon us without digital ID. There'll be no carbon credit scoring allowances. There'll be no central bank digital currencies or tokens. And I've been very clear from the beginning. I've told people that this is so important. If you say yes to digital ID, you'll never be able to say no to the government ever again. And you'd have to trust this government, which it's the most unpopular government we've ever had in the UK in record time. But not only this government, you have to trust future governments that you don't know who's going to be running those governments. And you'd be giving away your freedoms, not only your own freedoms. There's no way out of digital ID. It's a trap, and it's always easier to avoid a trap than get out of it once you're in it. I don't think there's any way out of it once you're in it. They'll have so much power over us, and you'll be condemning not only your children, grandchildren, but future generations of our nations yet unborn to effectively digital slavery. And they'll never know the freedoms that we gave away, and they're not our freedoms to give away for future generations. And this is the hill, I'm afraid, another hill we have to stand on and fight on.
And this is the one to be prepared to die on. I said to a young woman the other day, you will have to be prepared to sacrifice things, to sacrifice convenience and ease if you want freedom for your children. So I'm going to ask everybody at this point, please repost this interview to at least 100 people, because the government is already censoring many of us and trying to shadow ban. I know, Andrew, you have a lot of that. So if you repost it personally, it gets around the shadow banning a little bit. Thank you for doing that. So, Andrew, you posted the little children that we saw at the opening here, all with a QR code, as if they are a barcoded item in a shop, all waiting for mandatory vaccinations. If we say no to these vaccinations, we lose all our privileges in society. Do you think it could get this bad?
I've already seen people in the UK who've gone against the narrative have threats of having their children taken into care. I mean, that's been used in the UK for a very long time as intimidation to parents to get them to get into line, and that's without the sledgehammer of a digital ID linked to a social credit scoring system and central bank currency or tokens, which can be turned off at will. And also, I mean, if this comes in, they don't need to build the walls, as Catherine rightly pointed out. They don't need to build the walls around our 15-minute communities. They just program your bank card so your card doesn't work more than 15 minutes away from your home, and that'll decide which shop you go to, which facilities you can use, and that's, people just are sleepwalking into this, and it sounds almost unreal. They cannot believe that a government would inflict this upon them, but that's why they're not talking about it. That's why they're bringing it in quietly. It's always for your convenience and for your safety. Well, I think it was one of the early American revolutionaries that said that you're always being asked to give up your freedom for safety and convenience. Well, if you do that, you'll end up with neither freedom nor safety, and the only convenience will be that the government will be able to manage every aspect of your life very easily.
Catherine, let's really unpack it now then. If we have a look at this video, it shows, we'll just put this over while we keep talking. This shows a young Chinese woman who's just been arbitrarily locked out. She can't leave her smart city. She doesn't know why. There's nobody there to tell her, but her card pass won't work. And you can see she's trying every single exit from this city. You really realize when you watch this little video, this little snippet, it's open-air prisons that they have planned for it, is it not, Catherine?
It's open-air prisons, but it's the kind of open-air prisons you would use for livestock. So we know that the World Economic Forum has said it's 2030 and you have no assets. They're very serious about this. It's by controlling financial transactions that you can siphon off and take those assets in hundreds of different ways. And I have many people say to me, I don't care, I don't have a lot of assets. I said, you have your children. What you're doing, if you look at every pedophile scandal we've dealt with for decades now, including, of course, in the U.S., we're having a big brouhaha about the refusal to release the Epstein files. You're basically saying, okay, the people who ran the Epstein network, who participated in the Epstein network, now have the power to literally force you to turn your kids over to them. is that really what you want? You know, and you're giving them literally that power. They won't need Epstein anymore to recruit your children. They'll just stake them. So this is, you know, I don't think people understand how dire ultimately, and you know, the trick has been to build the corrals around us. So we've built 3 walls of the corral, and digital ID and programmable money in combination put up that 4th fence. And then we're in an entirely new world that most people can't fathom, because we've enjoyed liberty, we've enjoyed financial transaction freedom. We can't fathom what this world is like, nor can we fathom the fact that we're looking at a leadership who has absolutely no empathy towards us and feels towards us the way a rancher might feel about livestock he's ready to auction off.
That is horrendous, Alex. That's horrendous, that we are absolutely nothing to our leaders, who are meant to be our servants, who are meant to be representing us. They loathe us, don't they? This crop of
they
leaders.
absolutely do. Yeah, I would argue that it's even worse than livestock. You know, I've got livestock, and I like my livestock. The Bible says the righteous man takes good care of his beast, and in any case, it's an asset to me, right? Even if I didn't like my livestock, even if I thought you're a smelly cow, I don't like you, at least it has value for me. I have a vested interest in taking good care of it so that I can sell it at some point and make some money. These people actually hate us. And if you listen to them closely, it's actually very, very clear. I'll give you an example. I go to these UN climate summits every year. I'll be going to one in just a couple weeks in Brazil. And I've got the video of these people. They talk about human beings like we are some sort of plague on this planet. I'll never forget, I was in Rio de Janeiro in 2012 at the UN Conference on Sustainable Development. And they had all these posters around. It was a kind of an anthropomorphic Earth. It looked very sick. It had a thermometer sticking out of its mouth. And then you had the doctor diagnosing the problem. And the doctor says, I know your problem. You have humans. Like, yeah, humans are like a cancer on this planet. It's the same general philosophy that we saw in the Club of Rome report in 1991, the first global revolution. As the Cold War was coming to an end, they needed kind of a new pretext to have this huge government, these massive taxes, this micromanagement of our lives. And they came up with the idea, people can read this report themselves, you can order it on Amazon, that we needed a new enemy. And so we came up with the idea of the environment being threatened, of global warming. And they said that way, the enemy is humanity itself. And so these people regard us with a hatred that I don't think a normal person can understand, because we're occupying land that they think they're entitled to. We're consuming resources that they think they're entitled to. And to take it one step further, to get into the spiritual dimension, you know, human beings are made in the image of God, is what the Bible teaches. This is actually one of the foundational principles of Western civilization. Whether you believe that or not, people who hate God, by definition, would hate those who are made in the image of God. And so you wonder, how can people murder millions of people? You know, we saw it in China. We saw it in the Soviet Union. A normal mind doesn't comprehend this, because a normal mind doesn't want to murder millions of people. Your neighbor doesn't understand that there's a significant segment of the population, I don't know what it is, 1%, 2%, 4%, that hates humanity and is willing to actually exterminate millions of men, women, and even children, and get joy out of that, feel that they've accomplished something positive by that. So I would argue that humanity is at a crisis point right now. And just like was discussed, this Real ID thing, this is going to be the last major battle. If we give up, they will be able to enforce compliance on every other issue every time, or they will completely destroy your life. So we have to treat this with the seriousness it deserves. And to your point, Liz, I would encourage everybody watching here, share this out, send it to your elected officials, send it to your family, send it to your pastor, send it to anybody in a position of influence. We've got to get the alarm sounded here.
Okay, let's move to that so that people don't despair too much at this stage in the discussion. Catherine, tell us about Solari.com. What does the name stand for, and what you are doing, because you've just in October, I think the 21st, begun a 60-day challenge to help the people, of whom there are billions of us, against the few, maybe 13 families, that's all, to help us to push back. What is Solari doing? If you could tell us about that.
So the great cause for optimism is that many of the implementations to build the control grid are being supported and financed by us. So if you look, for example, at the, I'll use America, if you look at the average American, they are going to work in building the control grid. They are banking with the banks that are leading the control grid. If you look at their IRA or their brokerage account, they are financing, and they are very excited because they're making lots of money building the control grid. And you know, there's a multiple personality disorder in how the money works. Now, one of the things we know is the digital control grid depends on a 100% digital transaction system, and we have not gotten there yet. A great deal of effort has been made by both the banks and the central banks to get us to 100%, but we're not there. And we believe the way to stop this cold that everybody can do, so I agree with Alex that this is spiritual. Everybody can pray, but everybody can use cash and preserve the analog systems, whether it's checks, money orders. There's a dedicated population in the United States to using analog transaction systems and refusing to go all digital. If everybody threw their smartphone in the river or the lake tomorrow or the ocean tomorrow, this could never happen. So the first thing we can do is we can all use cash and refuse to go 100% digital. And one of the beauties of cash is if you look at the mechanisms we use to transact with cash, many of those come with surveillance and entrainment and subliminal programming and mind control. So what you'll find is you'll be much smarter about your money if the people you're transacting with or the mechanisms that you're transacting with aren't also mind controlling you. And cash does not come with entrainment or subliminal programming, at least that I know of. But,
Give an example of that, Catherine, of subliminal mind control that comes with it. Tell people how they may be being manipulated, coerced.
Right. So digital electronic systems, whether on your TV or your smartphone or your laptop, can integrate basically mind control technology. So I first found out about this in the 80s. I overheard a conversation by two billionaire types I wasn't supposed to hear, and they were talking about entrainment and subliminal programming. And grossly oversimplified, entrainment makes you resonate with something you normally wouldn't resonate, and then subliminal programming comes in through the resonation suggesting. And you know, and I first started to write about this at Solari because as an investment advisor, it was being used to market financial fraud. So a lot of times you see people who've lost money on healthcare fraud or financial fraud. Often those are marketed using entrainment technology. Also, people buying things they can't afford, those are marketed with entrainment technology. If you come to Solari, we have put in the words mind control in the search box. You'll pick up our collection, and we have a wealth of information. We just did a great interview called Cognitive Liberty with Josh Steinman on all the different things from mind control to propaganda that are done to basically make people persuadable. Of course, we know the big one being the pandemic, that the shots did a variety of things to people that really hurt cognition and their ability to protect themselves. You know, we are also being poisoned, and that makes it harder to protect ourselves against these things. So to us, a major issue is cognitive liberty, but we know that a lot of the controls come with the digital technology that would also then be used to get 100%. So we're a big believer in cash and in preserving the analog systems. But the other thing is, if you go down your income statement and balance sheet, what you will find if you really dig in is they are few, we are many. We are building and financing and supporting this building of the control grid, and we have the power to stop. I dare say, if everybody in the UK tomorrow said, I'm going to do everything I can to leave the banks who are supporting this, I'm going to do everything I can to stop investing in the companies that are doing this, I'm going to quit working for a company that's building a control grid and, go do something productive with my life, you would have, just as they're engineering a financial coup and a digital coup, you would have a financial rebellion. So part of this is connecting the dots between where our time and money is going and what we're supporting, and saying, no, I don't want to support something that's going to basically make me a slave.
In a Friday Combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, do you come from a land down under, where women go and men wonder? Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Buying bread from a man in Brussels. He was 6'4" and full of muscle. I said, do you speak my language? He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich. And he said, I come from